when we really look at this 5th chapter, Joshua, ushers, you can be seated. When you look at this 5th chapter of Joshua, it's actually a continuation from chapter 3 and chapter 4. You remember on last week it was Memorial Day weekend, and we kind of tied our message in with the Memorial Day weekend because God had told Joshua and the children of Israel to leave 12 stones as a memorial for them to remember what he had done for them. He had brought them from a mighty long way. They were captives in Egypt for over 400 years in slavery, and God heard their cry, and he let them, he turned them loose, and now this is actually the second piece of water that they've had to cross. Well, for 3 of them, for 2 of them it was Caleb and Joshua, but for the other generation that was there, this was the first time that they were crossing through water miraculously, because their parents had crossed through the Red Sea. They crossed through the Red Sea when Moses got to the Red Sea, and they didn't know how they was going to get over. God told Moses to stretch his rod out. The Red Sea opened, and they walked through on dry land. Last week we saw where now this new generation that had been born in the wilderness, while they were in the wilderness for 40 years just roaming around in circles, now it's their time to go into the promised land. And here they come to the Jordan, and now they've already crossed the Jordan. When we come to chapter 5, we see that they've already gone through the Jordan River. God has miraculously again allowed them to walk through this river, which was really high at this time of the year, and they were able to walk on dry land. I think that deserves me pulling up in somebody's driveway right here and parking for a moment, because it might seem as though you might have a river in your life. There might be some stuff in your life that it seems as though you can't swim through it, you can't walk through it, you can't even wade through it. But how many know that God can open up your rivers? God can make rivers part. God can allow you to do the impossible. You see, God says if he lets us know that if we do the possible, that he's able to do the impossible. Amen. And so here it is, and that's why a lot of us can say that he's brought us a mighty long way. We know that it wasn't us that brought ourselves. We know that it was him that brought us this far by faith. And so here we are in the 5th chapter of the book of Joshua, and now here they are getting ready to prepare for battle. Now, I need you to understand something. I really need you to get this point right here, because this is really the backbone of the whole book of Joshua. This is where you really get the whole understanding of why God even put this in his holy writ. But you need to understand that even though he allowed them to go into the promised land, even though they were in this new land which was flowing with milk and honey, they still were going to have to fight. Even though they were going into the land, they were going to have to fight. And there's a great symbolism there. There's a great picture for us as Christians there, because we need to understand when we have crossed our Jordan is crossing from a life of being out of the ark of safety into now being into a life of safety. We need to know that as being Christians, we have battles to fight. Don't ever think that this life is just going to be peaches and cream. Everything might be going okay for you now, but you need to keep in mind that as a believer, we're always going to have crosses to bear. We're always going to have hills to climb. We're always going to have storms to have to endure. But how many know that even though you might have those trials and tribulations to go through, God will always be there. He'll never leave us, nor will he forsake us. And so here they are, they're in the land. the text says that the kings, verse 1 talks about the kings of the Amorite who was on the west side of Jordan. They heard about them being in the land. They got fearful. And now God tells Joshua to circumcise the children of Israel again. Now, let me give you my first point right here about he brought us from a mighty long way, because the first thing we have to understand about him bringing us from a mighty long way is that God will prune us. He'll prune us. He tells Joshua to circumcise the Jews. Now, you need to understand something about circumcision. Circumcision was a sign, it was a covenant that God made with the children of Israel as a sign, as a stamp of approval that they were his children. He made them a promise. He made them a promise. He made them a promise. He made the promise to Abraham that you will be the father of many nations, and that the nation of Israel is that the world, that all other nations were going to be blessed through Israel. But then he also gave them a physical sign, and the physical sign was circumcision. Now, you need to understand that the people that were circumcised, they're all dead. The people that he told when he gave the commandment to Moses, they're all dead because they died in the wilderness. The people he's talking to now, they are the offsprings of those who died in the wilderness. And while they were in the wilderness, watch this, while they was in the wilderness for the 40 years, nobody got circumcised. But it's time for this generation that he's talking to now that's in the promised land. It's time for them to be circumcised. God's given them a command to be circumcised, and circumcision hurts. When I says prune, anybody in here from the South, anybody in here that knows anything about grapevines and so forth, they know in order for fruits to bear, you have to prune them. There's some stuff that you have to break off. You have to break off in order for it to grow. You know, that's why we ought not get so upset when God starts breaking stuff off us. It's going to hurt. Can I tell you the first thing I see about pruning? The first thing we have to understand about pruning is painful. He tells him to get, if you got a King James version, he tells them to get a sharp knife. That's what he says, a sharp knife. Other translations said he tells them to get a flint knife. That word flint, that word sharp in Hebrew simply comes from the word rock. He tells them, watch this, he tells them to get a rock and make it out of a knife. Can you imagine? Come on, brothers. Can you imagine getting a rock and making a knife out of a rock? Watch this. The bad thing about it is to cut your skin. To cut your skin. Painful. I mean, it's painful even just sitting there thinking about that, isn't it? It's painful. Watch this. It's painful enough for us brothers. I'm talking to the brothers right now because we're the ones that physically had to go through circumcision. It's painful enough for us as babies being put under the medicine and getting this done. But can you imagine a grown person not under no medicine, up under nothing, having to have your skin cut? Isn't that painful? Painful. But could I tell you? Could I show you the analogy here? The analogy is that's just how sin is. Sin is, whether we realize it or not, whether we're having fun in it or not, it's painful. Come on, I see y'all looking at me funny. Y'all know we've done some stuff in our life that wasn't right, but it caused us some pain, pain.